Hello, we're going to be talking about Module 15.1, two-way frequency tables. So a frequency is the number of times an event occurs. A two-way table shows the frequencies of data that is categorized two ways. The rows are one category, the columns are the other. So for this question, a poll of 120 town residents found that 40% own a bike. Of those who own a bike, 75% shop at the farmer's market. Of those who do not own a bike, 25% shop at the farmer's market. So we have to fill out this table, and we have farmer's market, no farmer's market, bike, no bike, and then the total. So it says there's 120 people total, so let's put that in here. And A is done. Now we have to fill in the right column. And now it says the next one, so there's the 120 residents. 40% own a bike. So we're going to have to multiply 0.4, or 40%, times 120, which equals 48. So there's 48 people who own a bike. Now, there's either people who own a bike or you don't own a bike. So 48 plus whatever the no bike should equal 120. So you can do 120 minus 48 to get you 72. So 72 people do not own a bike in this town, or out of the 120 residents. Now we can fill in the top row. So there's the 40% own a bike. Of those who own a bike, so we're only going to be talking about those 48, 75% shop at the farmer's market. So you're going to multiply 0.75 times 48, and that gets you 36. Now, same thing, it's going to be 36 plus whatever the no farmer's market equals the total, or 48 minus 36, which would be 12. So that's that part. Now, of those who do not own a bike, so we're going to be talking about these 72 people, 25% shop at the farmer's market. So we're going to do 72 times 0.25, and that gets, that gets you 18. That means this is going to be 54. And then you can also add up your columns. So 36 plus 18 is 54, and 12 plus 54 is 66. So we have answered the whole question and filled out the whole table. So it says, how can you check that the table is corrected completely? What you could do is 36 plus 12 equals 48. 18 plus 54 equals 72. 54 plus 66 equals 120. So the rows should add up to the total, and then the same thing with the columns. So 36 plus 18 equals 54. 12 plus 54 equals 66. 48 plus 72 equals 120. So that's how you can answer all those. So the next part, we have to decide whether there's an association. So a relative frequency is the ratio of the number of times an event occurs to the total number of events. In the Explore activity, the relative frequency of bike owners who shop at the farmer's market was 36 out of 120, or 0.3, which is 30%. So you can use these to decide if there's an association. So for example 1, it says 100 teens were polled about whether they are required to do chores and whether they have a curfew. Is there an association between having a curfew and having to do chores? So the first thing we want to do is find the relative frequency of just everyone who has to do chores. So there's 100 people. There's 100 people that were surveyed, and only 20 do chores. So 20 divided by 100 equals 20%. So 20% of these 100 people do chores. Now we have to find the relative frequency of having to do chores among those who have a curfew. So we're only going to look at the curfew. So there's a total of 32 people, and 16 of them do chores. So 16 divided by 32 equals 50%. So is there an association between having a curfew and having to do chores? Since 50% is a lot higher than 20%, more people who have a curfew do chores. That could be because their parents give them more responsibilities, or they make them accountable for their actions, and don't just let them run around and do nothing. So, yes, there is an association since that 50% is higher. Same thing here. Data from 200 flights were collected. The flights were categorized as domestic or international, and late and not late. Is there an association between international flights and being late? So we have to first talk about being late. We have 200 flights total, and 40 of them are late. So 40 divided by 200 is 0.2 or 20%. Now we have to find the relative frequency of a flight being late among the international flights. So we're only going to look at the international flights. So the total is 50, and that goes on the bottom. And then the number that were late are 10. So 10 out of 50, which is 0.2 or 20%. So since that's the same or within 5 or 10% of each other, there would be no association. Like, the international flights are no more likely of being late than the domestic flights. So for your turn. So data from 200 middle and high school students were collected. Students were asked whether or not they had visited at least one national park. Is there an association between being a high school student and visiting a national park? So first we have to look at the total. So the number that have visited a national park, so 105 out of 200. That's the total people that have visited a park. And 105 divided by 200 is roughly, 53%. Now, the next one we're going to take a look at is high school students. So we're only going to look at the high school students. And there's 120 that were surveyed. And it says 80 have visited a national park. So 80 out of 120 is about 67%. So would there be an association? I would say yes, because it's 5 or 10. It's more than 5 or 10% higher. So there is an association with being a high school student and visiting a national park. Probably because they have a car or have more freedom from their parents and they can go visit parks. If you have any questions, please reach out to me, send me an email, and I'll respond as soon as I can. Thanks.